Takes off. Needs the 34, and he gets it. Trey Lance. You talk about him running the ball. He said he's put a lot of time thinking about when he can go down and avoid big hits. This wasn't one of them, and he gets a first down.
Now, back to Steiny and Guru on 95.7 The Game.
All righty. Thank you very much. Let's go right out to the phone lines and introduce Steve Wyche, Chief National Reporter for the NFL Network. Steve, what's going on, man? Thanks for your time.
What's going on, gents? Hope everything's going well here in the middle of minicamp OTA season.
Where are you right now?
I'm at home. I'm here in LA.
Okay.
Yeah,
all right.
I'm not on the tour right now.
Okay. Here's where I'm going to start because Steve, you and I go way back when you covered the Miami Heat. So I just want to ask, and I'm sure Spoelstra and Riley were still there, right, when you were there?
So Spo was the video guy. I covered them from 97 to 99. Spo was the video guy, and then he ended up being like their advanced scouting guy. Pat Riley was still the coach when I covered him.
Huh. All right, so here's my first question, only one about basketball. Is there something to the Heat culture, or is it more of a myth?
No, it's legit. I mean, it's legit. I mean, and you hear when people talk about it, think it's not for everyone. You know, how they come in there and they grind guys. And, you know, some guys aren't built for it. But look at how, you know, you have got to be selfless. Like, even when I covered them, when they had Alonzo Mourning and Tim Hardaway and Jamal Mashburn and Dan Marley, I mean, it was an all-star starting five that they had on that team with a lot of depth. They all had to play a certain way. They all were built a certain way. Like, they were the first team to really embrace, like, crazy weightlifting. And stuff like that. So it was really, you know, for those old enough to know, it was kind of that old Big East mentality when I covered. Remember, that's when basketball, when the final scores were like 87-82. But they still have something to that stream of consciousness because the guys in the front office now were the dudes on the coaching staff back then. I mean, there's been very little overall turnover in that building when it comes to Heat culture in terms of leadership.
Steve, good stuff. I want to switch it to the 49ers, and you tell me if I'm being overly critical because I'm all over on this subject, which is Kyle Shanahan. I recognize his brilliance, but yet I still criticize him for the 19 Super Bowl, the play calling in the fourth quarter, the 10-point lead against the Rams in the NFC Championship game. And, Steve, had he thrown that flag on the touchdown that really wasn't a touchdown against the Eagles, who knows how that game plays out? We never know what tomorrow's going to bring. I don't know how big this window is for the Niners and Kyle, but am I off base by criticizing and saying, you know what, in-game situations, I'm looking at Kyle to see if he's gotten better?
Well, I've got to strongly disagree. I mean, look, I think any criticism is fair because they haven't gotten it done. But, you know, I look at some of the late turnovers that, you know, were Jimmy Garoppolo picks. With some of those, I look at, you know, when I see one of the teams that's best at halftime adjustments in the NFL, I think the Niners are there on both sides of the ball. I think in-game strategy-wise, Kyle Shanahan is one of the best in the NFL. I think that's why a guy like Brock Purdy can come in the middle of the Miami Dolphins game and not miss a beat because he's been able to do that. But I do think some of your criticisms are fair. Some of the play calling could be fair, but you know, I think when you look at the Niners, some of the player execution, especially at quarterback, is what I mean. Look, if Jimmy G, you know, gets that ball to Kittle, they win that Super Bowl, right? I mean,
or Sanders,
G, yeah. I mean, if Jimmy G doesn't throw a pick in that NFC Championship game late, they're going in to score.
Yeah.
So, you know, Kyle called the right play, just the execution wasn't there. But I do think some of the criticisms are fair as well.
Steve Wyche joining us on 95.7 The Game. He's the chief national reporter for NFL Network. Steve, when you look at the 49ers quarterback situation right now, is it a position of strength or weakness?
I have to go neither. It's a position of, the bubble thought question mark. Like, what do we know? Because Brock Purdy, I know they keep saying, we think he's going to be healthy, and they said by the beginning of the season, but will he remain healthy, right? Trey Lance, will he develop? I mean, to me, the fact where I'm kind of like, What's really going on is the fact that Sam Darnold is still being mentioned as a possible starter. And this is nothing against Sam, but we know what he is. We know the body of work, right? Talented player who hasn't found a way to get over the hump. And he got the excuse of Adam Gase up in New York. He did some good things in Carolina, but he didn't do great things. He's another guy who's got some injury issues, durability issues. So to me, Trey Lance this is one of the biggest stories that's not being talked about. This dude has got a golden opportunity right now, getting most of the offseason reps. And the fact that we haven't heard some of the he's taken a lead right now. He's showing us everything we need to see, that constant stuff, not just from coaches, but from teammates. That's why I'm kind of like, wow, like really what's happening at that quarterback position. Because at the other positions, we don't know about right tackle, but the other positions, they're pretty much rock solid all the way through.
Yeah, Steve, I agree with you, and I got to be honest with you. A couple of days ago, I keep telling my partner and the people and the fans, the Niners moved mountains to get Trey Lance, and from my history and experience, that those guys get 9 lives before they pull the plug. We got prominent people out here with the Niners, saying, oh, they should trade and get off of Trey. And I'm like, I even had to go race, Steve. Like, I didn't know what it was because it was so just the polarizing of how you want to pull the plug on something you haven't seen. But with that, I can still give Brock Purdy his flowers. I want to ask you about Brandon Ayuk. He's different than Debo. I think he's a more natural receiver than Debo. And I know he was in the draft with CeeDee Lamb and Jefferson. But what are you seeing from Brandon Ayuk? Because I'm telling my partner, I don't think this dude can do it.
Whoever thinks he can't do it, I don't know what you've been watching.
Right.
I mean, seriously. I mean, every year he's gotten better, and I think every year he's gotten opportunity, and I think he's gained trust. I mean, what he did the last couple of years in some big moments of games was fantastic, especially when Debo was hurt or when Debo was having to play running back. I mean, when you see a player evolve and get better year after year, I think when I hear these people talk about great wide receiver tandems, the fact that they don't talk about Debo and Ayuk boggles my mind. Like these guys get it done. Now the Niners do it a little bit differently because McCaffrey's the catalyst, but those two dudes, man, the way they produce and what they account for in this offense, I'm a big Brandon Ayuk guy.
Yeah.
Steve Wyche joining us on 95.7 The Game, chief national reporter for NFL Network.
Talk to us, 90.
Hey, the one thing I want to ask you about is, 49er fans are looking forward to this season, but I'm telling them, Steve, careful. Seattle's got some action. The Seahawks got some action. Am I right or wrong?
No, you're 100% right. They got action. I mean, this is why everything comes down to quarterback play for the Niners. Everything comes down to quarterback play, because otherwise they can stand up. And I remember last year preseason talking to Fred Warner. He's like, we think we're good. We just don't know what we're going to get out of our quarterback. And then he goes out and gets hurt, and you're still kind of in the same predicament this year. We're going to be good, but we don't know what we're going to get out of quarterback because of Purdy's, health situation. But in terms of Seattle, I mean, talent-wise, they got better. I mean, they enhanced positions of strength, which is their secondary, by getting a guy like Devin Witherspoon, who's a monster in the slot. He just has to get up to NFL speed. You add another wide receiver, and then you see what Geno Smith has, and you add another stud running back. So, I mean, they nailed the draft last year. They've got an aura of confidence. Pete Carroll's a great developer of guys, and so he keeps that chip on. Seattle's going to be right there. I mean, look, they gave the Niners hell last year, and so it's going to be those two teams, in the division. I think the Rams are going to be better what people think, but the Rams are just so fragile. They can't have one injury. Otherwise, things are going to fall apart again. But I think Seattle's going to be one of the teams we're talking about that could come out of the NFC.
Steve, we have some fun on the show. A lot of my partner and a lot of the fans say if I were GM or owner, I'd be broke because I'm always handing out blank checks. And the blank checks are for guys like Steph Curry and Nick Bosa. Right now, Donald's the highest paid defensive player in the league, but I expect that not to be for long. Can you talk to us about Bosa? And am I right in expecting him to surpass what he's making because he's that damn good?
Yeah, I mean, look, the market always goes up. so he's going to surpass. I mean, Nick Bosa he's. I think Steve Wilkes said the other day he's on that Canton track. But he's so good. You know, he flips both sides at defensive end. He's good against the run. His effort is incredible, and he closes the deal. One of the hardest things to do in the NFL is to get a sack. People do not understand how difficult that is, especially when you're a marked man like Bosa. Now, getting Javon Hargrave is going to help him out quite a bit because that dude is a real one. Okay, so that's going to help that whole defensive line out a bit. So this year, I think the three dudes off the edge, and this is not discounting the great edge rushers, but Bosa, Max Crosby, and Jalen Phillips down in Miami, I think are going to be, the biggest hell raisers there. But Bosa is just, he should be the highest paid, if not one of the highest paid defensive players in the NFL.
Great stuff, Steve. As always, thank you so much for joining us, and have a great year, my man.
Appreciate you guys.
Yes, sir. That's Steve Wyche, Chief National Reporter for NFL Network.